Well, good morning, everybody. I want to start you off today by looking at the total precipitation ranks by climate district since November the 1st. And as we have a look here at much of the Midwest, upper Midwest, northern plains, parts again of the Ohio Valley down into even Texas and into the Mid-South, it's been dry. California's been dry as well. The southwestern part of the United States has been quite dry too. And one of the issues I have with giving you, I think, what I would call better long-range guidance is that we've had so many misgivings about, one, the current strength of the El Nino, two, the performance of some of the longer-range models, and three, kind of the persistence in this pattern. Okay, so we need to weigh all of those things as we start to think about the bigger picture going forward. So we do have some spots here that have been wet, like the Pacific Northwest, as we know, has been just taking on the brunt of strong onshore flow. Some places here picking up, 15 plus inches of rainfall lately. But I just want to stress some of these bigger issues, because if you look at the current root zone soil moisture maps, we've not seen this fall capable of eating away at some of the bigger problems we have throughout much of the Midwest plains into the Delta and into the Southeast as well. And this is something, I'll just say it again, that if this is not undone by April and May of next year, it's kind of a strike against us going into the 2024 growing season in this area. Now, there's hope that it could be undone. I actually think we could have, like I've been saying for a few weeks now, a really heavily back-weighted winter, where I think most of the action is going to be happening from January into February and into March. And I've got a little bit more evidence of that, but again, not a lot of confidence as we go forward right now. Newest drought monitor looks something like this. This was released yesterday morning. And we haven't seen an overall significant change. There was some drought reduction, of course, in the Pacific Northwest, but we went immediately to flooding in that area. So that's kind of a hard thing to gauge overall when you look at a map like this. But there has been some improvement down across the south. We need to continue to see greater improvement in that. But one thing that has not changed is the Mississippi River. We've watched it sink back down to about 7.3 feet below low stage. And if you remember back in November, we talked about bouncing off of the bottom of this and making a recovery more quickly. In fact, we thought we'd already be above low stage by the time we started this second week of December. And here we are, just still dropping these values back down again. The forecast, unfortunately, for this same area has trended drier again for the next 10 plus days. It may be until we get to the end of December and the beginning of January that the fortune's going to start to change for this area. But it's not as though there's no precipitation. It's just the bigger picture is drier overall. Now, lately, just want to give you the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. Everything that you see here was from this system last Friday and Saturday. But since then, we have added up some places here. Like I said, we're off my color bar. There were some places that picked up over a foot of rain and even higher in some other locations. We've also added a bit more snow lately. So remember, the snow levels came up early this week. We added rain on top of snow. We've since then seen them come back down again, and now you can start to see where some fresh snow has been picked up here in the Northern Rockies, Cascades, and even parts of the Sierra Nevada. We also had some lighter snow that moved east over the last couple of days here as well. Now, the bigger picture is right now, just kind of taking a look across the country, there is a low that's spinning itself up here, southern Canada, parts of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and then North Dakota. We're going to watch for the snow here. This is also giving us a pretty dramatic change in temperatures. And while the west gets a slight break from just the incredible onshore flow, it is going to pick back up again. Take a look at all the reflectivity values we're getting down here in Texas. This is kind of neat. So overnight last night, that's what you're looking at here. We start to see the inversion set up, and that's when you start to get all of these echoes from non-meteorological targets like wind farms. And I was using some of the high-res model data to give us a forecast sounding, because I'm recording this before the National Weather Service launches the weather balloons. I just picked a spot right down here in central Texas. You can see where the red dot is, and that's a pretty strong inversion that set up last night. So these temperatures have fluctuated wildly in Texas as of late, and they've also done that in the northern plains. So just having a quick look here, let's blow this up. These are the service observations this morning, and we noticed the winds have already shifted directions across the Dakotas out of Montana. They were yesterday pretty strong out of the south. We're now just racing out of the northwest. Wind gusts here, 35 miles an hour. And if you take a look, we have a few places already reporting snow this morning, so there's snow on the backside of this. The temperature change here has been pretty dramatic, or will be dramatic, especially over here in South Dakota. After nearly breaking several records yesterday, they are going to be seeing a pretty sizable change in temperatures. So pretty impressive little system going through here. So as of 5:35 this morning, we're concerned about the winds in this area. We have the winter storm watch, the winter weather advisories north. A lot of winter weather advisories that stretch along the spine of the Rockies, including the risk of some snow maybe getting to the panhandles. We're quite windy from Southern California over to New Mexico as well. And like we talked about, late this week, continuing, we have the frost risk and freeze risk that is in the Central Valley of California. So here's what I'm watching. This is kind of the mid-level of the atmosphere wind flow. We're kind of zoomed in on North America. There's a pretty potent little shortwave right here that's going to get some extra kick from the stronger winds behind it. Here's the wave to the north that's producing the low that's moving through North Dakota. And we're going to see all of this kind of work together with one quick moving wave here, a deeper wave diving, and that's going to really set us up for the next 4 to 5 days with a pretty potent system that we'll get into parts of the eastern United States. Now the west, I'm going to come back to you in a few moments just because of what I want you to see coming off of Japan by the time we get out about 10 to 12 days from now. But in the near term, we do have the strong thunderstorm risk today down here in parts of the Mid-South over toward the Delta. And then you'll see tomorrow that expands from eastern Texas into western Tennessee. And the Storm Prediction Center has been on top of this. There is the threat, a severe weather threat. So we do have the threat of tornadoes and hail and strong winds out of this as we play our way into Saturday. I think the best way to look at it is just go right to the high-res NAM and just get an idea about what this is going to look like. So we'll play this through. This is starting off about 9 a.m. on Friday this morning. We watch the snow spreading through the Dakotas here, out of parts of Manitoba into this section of Ontario. There could be some scattered showers all in this area, but take a look. Watch this. Watch right in through here. You're going to see two things. Snow trying to spread south on the front, but the short wave kicks off here and goes off to the east. So ready? So this is Friday night, getting into the early morning hours on Saturday. So did you see it? The short wave snuck out and is now moving over Illinois, Wisconsin, and Iowa. And then the frontal boundary in the backside trying to drop some pretty cold air into parts of southern Colorado, New Mexico, Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma Panhandle. And so that snow could show up, so be aware of this. Could be some big fat flakes coming out of this system. Now, meanwhile, this is 8 a.m. Saturday morning, so the snow is now spreading into parts of northern Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And we're going to watch on Saturday night right in through here for the risk of those strong to severe storms to erupt. Now you notice that we do have our next onshore kind of push of flow coming in here, putting in some snow into parts of Washington and some coastal rain again. But this is Saturday night playing into the overnight hours on early Sunday morning now, and you're going to see some of that snow moving into parts of Montana and Idaho, while the main frontal boundary stretches out here farther to the east, adding quite a bit of rain that's going to go up the east coast. Now, this is the system we're going to watch later in the weekend curl its way into New England and possibly deliver some decent snows. So let's just get in there and see what the snow is going to look like from the NAM before I switch over and show you the longer range models. So this is what I got from the NAM. I don't often rely on the NAM as a good predictor of snow. So when you look at these values, let's not over-assign snowfall totals to it, but there's a decent chance of picking up more than 4 inches here in North Dakota, Minnesota. We got, maybe 1 to 2 inches across this whole region, and then just note the chance for that snow getting out of Colorado into Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico is something to watch as well. Cascades get more, so do the northern Rockies here. All right, on to the bigger picture things. We've talked about this all week, right? There's this split where there's such cold air across much of Russia and very mild air across North America. And we are watching the translation of this east. And so what this is going to do is, if you combine it with the what we call a mountain torque, okay, there's influence by the Himalayan mountains on atmospheric momentum. And it's a kind of I often think of it as like a birthplace of weather systems. When you add this much contrast into the temperature pattern here, what we often get is just a jet that just pops out. And what that's possibly going to do is really influence the very end of this month, probably the beginning of January's weather patterns. Now I want to show you what I mean by that. We're going to look now at those wind speeds. So this is jet stream level wind speed. It looks like a bit of a mess here overall, and that's kind of the way it is. Okay, we got some split flow in the western United States here. Here's the broader trough on Saturday that kicks off that huge system that's going to go up the East Coast. We then go past that into early next week, and I just want to make a point here. Whenever we see the jet stream really heading north like this, it's hard to bring in sustained cold air to North America. We know where the cold air is. It's all here. And what it's doing is it's increasing kind of the thermal contrast and therefore the thermal wind, which is ultimately what drives the jet stream behavior in the polar jet. Now watch. This is next Wednesday playing into next weekend. getting out there into about the 18th, 19th, 20th. And what we see here is the beginning of a pretty powerful jet extension in the ensembles. So again, it's still, it's out there, it's still another 10 to 12 days away before this starts to happen. And once we see this jet extension, we need to ask, how is the West going to respond to this? Western United States, are we going to get some split flow and send this momentum into British Columbia and Alaska? Or is this going to really just target the West Coast for the very end of this month? Because that's a pretty strong and robust signal out there that far. Now, what this means is, if this is the case, we don't really pull into any sense of cold air at all across North America. I'm talking about Arctic connected cold air across North America. It's going to take time. It's going to be the very end of this month, I think, before we start to see that happening. What I do note is the presence of the subtropical jet down here across the south, and we'll see what that means as well. Okay, that's bigger picture as we look out there at just the jet stream level flow. Let's rein it back in and talk about our multi-model analysis. So GFS left, European model right. We've already watched through Friday, getting into Saturday. So again, we're going to keep an eye Saturday night down here for risk of strong to severe storms. I want you to watch this low curl itself up in both models along the East Coast. So this is great. We actually need the rain. There's going to be some thunderstorm activity here, and we'll watch out for the potential for some severe weather. But this low continues to exhibit a chance at starting to spin itself up at this point. Now remember, why does it look like this? That's because the jet was diving in, it got weak around the base, and then accelerated out. So we just have this long ribbon right in through here of vorticity. Remember us talking about that yesterday? Rather than a deep ball of it that's going to cause a big low to curl up here. So that's why it looks like a big long line with a shift west to east on precipitation type rather than a deeper low. When it starts to curl up is really not until we get into Monday midday over parts of Maine. But you can see there's going to be some snow in the interior of New England with this system. Now, I want to take you back because I don't want to ignore what's coming back into the Pacific Northwest this weekend. So this is Saturday, getting into Sunday and Monday. We have another push coming through at that particular point. Now, as we watch it going into next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, what we're going to be watching next is there is a broader trough that's going to be sitting over parts of the Southwest. And both models have been toying with developing something there. And we're going to have to see if something can emerge out of this area by the time we get about a week or more from right now. And if it does, it has the potential for being a larger system. But right now, the models are not giving us the support from the polar jet diving down. So do you remember that? We come back here. What do we have at that point? You see split flow coming over the top. It's the subtropical jet that's down here helping. So this is a little bit beyond this forecast time period I'm showing you, but that's still what's the setup here. So we end up getting the potential for a big system in the south, although the Europeans got it further off the coast. But this is way out there in a single model run, so we just have to be careful with understanding that this is going to change quite a bit. Let's go ahead and break this down, though, by a couple of different things. In fact, let's get here. This is the total accumulated precipitation for the next 7 days from the European model. So this is now playing into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We're going to stop this right here at 168 hours. That's a 7-day forecast. And what my mind is kind of just drawn to here is these places throughout the plains, Canadian Prairie, the Southwest, the Midwest, all the way down to the South, that just keeps missing. We keep missing the opportunities here because the jet refuses to come together to give us a nice deep low that comes out of the Four Corners states. They've been south or they've been weaker to the north, and we just haven't had it. But look, we're going to add up here another 1 to 3 inches in the Pacific Northwest out of this pattern. This is what the GFS says for the same model run, the 0Z run, so it's very similar overall. Can't make an argument that these two models are far off of one another. A little bit different intensity, but overall the pattern's about the same. On the snowy side of it, let's go ahead and add up the longer range snowfall outlook. So this is just playing through the weekend into early next week. We'll park it again out there at 168 hours right there. So you can see the snow spreading down here. Remember we talked about the chances for this. It's actually an additional push of that snow coming in about a week from now. That's that second system we were talking about. Snowfall totals into parts of New England here, still about the same as they were in the forecast yesterday, just picked up a bit in Vermont. And then we've got a good chance at 4 to 6 inches of snow, maybe locally heavier amounts in North Dakota. Best snows, I think, are coming into the Cascades late. This will be this weekend, and then you can see it adding up in the Rockies as well. The GFS has got this. So again, 7-day forecast, European. GFS, the models are pretty good on the overall placement of things. But I just keep coming back to the same map I've shown you all week, and that is who's going to be drier in this pattern. This shows you over the next 10 days the probability of getting less than a half inch. And what that's done, what the models have done, is really kind of opened this area up to more drier conditions, which when we go back to the beginning, just looking at why that's important, this has been an area that's not picked up much moisture. And you see that most of the rest of the plains has not picked up much more moisture either in the northern parts of the upper Midwest, So we just think about that and put it into context of where we've been and notice that this isn't a corrective pattern just yet. So by the time we get out there to next weekend, we do have a trough that's trying to advance toward the east, There is this trough here that may be a system, next Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But overall, I still get a lot of this. And you know what I'm about to say there, that's convergent flow. Now, if we go past that to the 18th, 19th, and 20th, there is some hints here that there could be a system rolling through around the solstice. And this is going to have to get watched carefully because just like the system now, it has good characteristics, but it's out there, 13 days away in the forecast. This is the problem. This is just what's going on that's dominating this pattern. Let me rephrase that. This Aleutian, this almost semi-permanent Aleutian low, this Alaskan low, this Alaskan trough, seems to be affecting the pattern here, and it's not letting go. Keep that in the back of your mind, But as it stands, the week 2 forecasts, they just continue to try to show wetter conditions in the southern plains on that system that comes out about a week from now, and then one at the day 13-14 time frame. One thing I do want to note is the CPC has been persistent with trying to keep wetter conditions across the west at times. And I'll just tell you something. If this verifies that we start to get this extension out here, and maybe it gets a little earlier, I really think there might be more to that whole wetter western outlook as we look at the day 8-14 time period. But I think the CPC's got a pretty good handle on what this is going to look like here. So why don't we flip this discussion over to temperatures? I want to show you a quick animation here from just the last 24 hours. You have a series of dots that represent either approaching or setting high temperatures, and we got very, very warm throughout the plains. Now, I was in South Dakota. Several locations were seeing, watch this, you'll see it go again. Several locations were tying daily records. We were working on a monthly record for the state as well. I'll have to wait for the official data to come in to see if we hit that. But the temperatures are changing pretty rapidly. So here's Friday's highs. So we're already down 20 plus degrees across South Dakota, even though it's still warmer than normal. The warmth is spreading farther to the east. We then see it going by Saturday morning up the east coast. By Sunday, we're cooler in through here, but remember, this is following the system that rolls east at that time. There's the big change in temperatures on Monday that's going to support that snow Monday night to Tuesday. But as I just play you out there in the next week, next Tuesday into Wednesday and Thursday, what do you see? You just don't see the atmosphere breaking over away from these mild conditions. And I'll just make the case again. Until we see this translate far enough east to disrupt the Aleutian low, to disrupt the flow pattern across the Pacific, this isn't going to break away. So we just play it forward over the next, this is day 5 through 10, and this is day 10 through 15. The only thing that's supporting the near normal to cooler than normal south is the subtropical jet stream. But take note that by the time we get out there, this would be the 23rd of December, we've moved some of that colder air over toward China. It's come out of Russia. And this is the setup, man, for giving us the extended Pacific jet. But that's going to be another week beyond this before that probably influences North American temperatures. All right, with that as the big setup, I do want to make a note here that the polar vortex, which remains displaced a bit on this side of the hemisphere, continues to stay there, but drops a pretty big lobe in the stratosphere over Greenland by the time we get to about Saturday the 16th into Sunday the 17th, Monday the 18th. Now, if we had in this same time a tropospheric trough in this area, this would be the call for massive Arctic outbreak, but right now they're not connected. And this is way out there in the forecast run from the ECMWF operational run, which means we're not overly confident in it. What I keep paying attention to is the stratosphere's got a big ridge over Alaska. So understand this. In the lower levels, there's a trough. In the upper levels, there's a ridge. The stratosphere, there's a ridge. And that seems to be keeping the pattern pretty set for a while. Now, El Nino is still there. Okay, it's still cranking. It actually warmed up a little bit over the last few days. Still have our negative PDO signal, our negative PMN signal. The Indian Ocean dipole continues to fall apart, which was expected. But we just think about the contributions of these things going into the forecast. I will have you note that the MJO is trying to find itself back out in the Pacific Ocean, weekly in phases 8 and 1. And we're getting a bit of a westerly wind burst out of that as well over the next 15 days. But this isn't full-blown El Nino, pattern. It's supportive, but I just want to let you know something, that this El Nino hasn't got its full grips on the pattern just yet. I think these more northerly latitude things have got a stronger control. So all that being said, I think this is our issue going over the next 30 plus days. In fact, well into January as well. How long does this hang on? That is the surface pressure anomalies over the Aleutian Islands. You see, the problem with having lows here is that the flow comes around them like this, and then it's got to make this turn and comes in like that across North America, and the subtropical jet slides underneath it. Now, to be honest with you, that kind of flow, just as I trace it out for you here again, that is very El Nino-y. I just think it's being dominated by a non-El Nino thing, this trough. So if you would like to know what it's going to take to break this pattern, to really break it, this has got to go. And I've been saying it all week, if we ridge out this area in the low levels and here, then this will change the entirety of the U.S. and Canadian prairie forecast. When is that going to happen? Well, most of this December 20 to January 20 timeframe keeps favoring this. You can see what that does to the precipitation pattern in the model during that time frame. So just look at where it's wet, right? This whole corridor stays wet in that time frame. That's because that low just sits there and curls up. Now, can we get better flow into California? Maybe, but this is not good for this area. Now, if that breaks down as the Pacific jet extends, which is kind of possible, then all of a sudden you will start cranking out those systems like I mentioned in yesterday's video here. We'll still keep the southwest. In fact, let's zoom into the United States so you can see this a little bit clearer. This will go. This will be done. We'll really change this up, but I don't think it's going to happen until we get well into January. That's my current thinking. Okay, just to let you know, very low confidence in anything beyond the next couple of weeks. I just want to make that statement here. I also now want to switch, before I give you long range, to South America. I got some new root zone soil moisture data from Grace. We just continue to see extremely dry conditions here. Now, if you had me just pin it down right now, this is what I would tell you. We've seen extremely wet conditions here. Some places are looking pretty good in southern Brazil. I think the garden spot is this spot right in the middle here, including parts of Paraná, Sao Paulo, getting into Mato Grosso do Sul. There's a big section right in through here that's probably doing okay, just south of Goiás. You get north of it and we've got our problems. Argentina started to make a recovery as well. Now, what I'm going to do next for you is I want to show you something. I tried to work on this in the airport yesterday. I need to refine it, but I'm using some data here from the CPC. It's their half-degree global precipitation data set. Now, what you've got I want you to see where the numbers are, because what I'm doing is I'm providing a rank in the last 30 days from the data from 1979 to present. So, in other words, where does 2023 rank? 2023, if you look at it, zeros would be the driest, 44s would be the wettest. So you see a lot of single digits here. I'm actually only plotting 0 to 10. So that would tell us where the drier numbers are. You think it down here and you're up in the upper 30s, low 40s, meaning top 5 wettest. So it's just kind of a way to see this from the CPC data. This mimics pretty closely to what the Era 5 data are showing as well. Now here's what I wanted to get to. I showed you this yesterday. Okay, this was kind of this big broad panel of everything that's going on. This is the European solution, and this is the GFS. Now watch. This was yesterday's forecast I gave you. This is today. Now you're not going to see much change in the GFS, but watch the European. So keep your eye right here. That's a substantial trend. Yesterday, today, going drier. I mean, a huge trend. And why I'm bringing this up is because we've now gone, look at this. My numbers yesterday, 30%. Brazil's area was growing drier. I said better rains in Mato Grosso do Sul and even into southern Mato Grosso. European model just yanked all of that out. Okay, so we're just doing quick model analysis here. Now that one fact, and the fact that back in November we over predicted the European model did here, has me calling this into question. This is the late December, the 21st to the 28th forecast from the ECMWF. Now, it has done this for this 1 week for the past 4 or 5 runs. It's tried to make it wetter across all of these extremely dry conditions, dry areas. And I'll just be honest with you, the GFS Extended has done it too. So we have multi-model support to say that this is going to break away in this area and get wetter. But notice this is way out there. This is the 21st through the 20th. That's week 3 in the forecast. And I'm just going to tell you something. This model has over-predicted this all growing season since the start of it. Now, my statement here is to tell you that even though there is model support, I want to let you know that there's a failure mode to this. Most of this is predicated on MJO movement into phase 8 and 1. I think that's a big contributor to this. But that MJO transition into phase 8 and 1, where in the world did I put that? Not there. Here we go. Is based upon relatively weak trade wind westerly wind burst. And I would just tell you that when you look at this potential transition into MJO phase 8 and 1, this isn't as though this is a very dominant signal. So I wonder if the models are over-attributing the MJO transition in the production of these rains. It's possible that that's what's going on. I'm just going to make one statement to finish this off. If this doesn't happen, then we are going to have to be talking about substantial reduction in yield potential for some of Brazil's biggest acres. If it does, it's not just a Band-Aid. It's a pretty big corrective action on the first crop of soybeans in this area. Watch that carefully. That's going to be the main thing that when I come back to you on Monday, if I show you the same time period and this all went over to these colors, then that's the shift that we needed to worry about. All right? Okay, there's one last thing to talk about, and that is the newest update from the National Multi-Model Ensemble. First, we're going to look at Niño Region 3.4. So that is this area out here where we watch the ocean temperatures change for El Niño. There's just one group of models, you can see they're colored here, that still want to bring a peak into January of El Niño, but most of them are at or near peak, or past peak, and are forecasting that by next June, July, we're going to be down here in weak, either INSO neutral or weak La Nina conditions. Now, the National Multi-Model Ensemble, I just saw it this morning, so I'm going to need some more time to kind of analyze this. This is its newest forecast for January, February, March. And what I did see trending in the model was drier in parts of the Mid-South, Midwest, and back into this section of the plains. It trended wetter for California. It trended less dry for the Pacific Northwest, but it maintained the wetter conditions south. So we're just looking at model trends at this point. We're going to work this weekend on explaining a bit more about what it does, and we're going to compare it to the European next week. So that's January, February, March. Let's lop off January and add April. The model then shrinks as we approach the second half of winter, the risk of the dryness in parts of the Midwest, Mid-South. It still keeps the risk here drier, but that's only because it's mostly being influenced by El Nino. So far, this has not played into El Nino's hands, right? And then we go out there to my last map today. This is March, April, and May. And what we do find is that years after a crashing El Nino event, spring tends to be wet for a big section of the eastern 2/3 of the United States once you get over the Rocky Mountains. So we need to watch that transition as well. We'll just kind of compare models next week. We should get the last couple of complementary longer range forecasts next week as well. So I look forward to showing you those. But that's what I got for you today. We'll watch this all weekend, see if there's any trends to note on Monday, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks.